Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Angus Licensing Board. I would remind all attendees that this meeting has been recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. Thank you. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Convener, there's no apologies. Councillor Gavin Nicholl has come in remotely to the meeting and all the rest of the members are in the chamber.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest and statements of transparency. None? No. Okay. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree these as a true record?
Agreed.
Takes us on to item 4, provisional premises licence application under the Licence in Scotland Act 2005. And the first one we have is Unit 2, land at Elliott Industrial Estate, Dundee Road, Arbroath. And I believe we have a Lynn Simpson. And sorry, I've only got a rep from Aldi.
Cammy Griffiths.
Oh, thank you. Lynn, would you like to speak on behalf of the application?
Thank you. Good morning, Your Honours. As you've heard, this is a provisional premises licence application for a new Aldi store at Elliott Industrial Estate on Dundee Road in Arbroath. Just to give you an idea where that will be, this is going to be part of a new retail park between the existing Westway retail park and the caravan park. It's the site in between. I think this might mean more to you than me, but it's the site of the former Presentation Products Factory. I think that gives you context of where that is. I suspect you're all familiar with Aldi and who they are. They're a multi-award-winning retailer, been operating in the UK since 1990. They now have over 100 stores in Scotland with plans for further growth and investment throughout Scotland. This site in Arbroath is part of that. They've invested around £55 million over the last 2 to 3 years in new sites and upgrade to existing stores. I say this Arbroath site is on the list. I think just to give you a little bit of background about Aldi and how they operate, their mission statement is to provide customers with good quality produce at a fair price. One of the key points behind their success is their business model of offering a core range of products, and by that I mean you might find that there are only 1 or 2 varieties of an item on a shelf rather than the sort of 7, 8, 9 varieties you might find somewhere else. The benefit is that they can offer that at lower prices and can pass the savings on to the customers, which is obviously well received in the current economic climate. And as a result, they've been named as the Which cheapest supermarket of the year for the last 3 years. On that same basis, where there's a limited range of core products, the alcohol range is exactly the same. There is a limited core alcohol range. It's a restricted range, but it's fundamental to their offering. All existing Aldi stores have permission to sell alcohol, primarily to ensure that they are financially viable. Their experience is that customers will go elsewhere if they can't offer that full basket shop, which sometimes may include an alcohol component. That being said, alcohol is very much ancillary to the overall offering that the store will bring. The capacity that we're looking for is around 42.8 square metres. I think there might actually be an error in the board report that was circulated. It's just a typo. I think maybe said 47.7 rather than 42.7. So just to clarify that, the exact number is 42.79801. So say round about 42.8 square metres. That accounts for just 1.67% of the overall sales area in the store. And in comparison to other stores, particularly of this size, other retailers, sorry, with stores of this size, that is a comparatively small area. I'd also just highlight that Aldi doesn't sell chilled alcohol, caffeinated wines, alcopops, or anything like that. Looking at the site itself, the proposal is to take one of the units to be constructed within the new retail park. Aldi will be investing around £2.4 million in this development. The store will create around 30 to 35 full-time equivalent jobs, and we expect there'll be additional opportunities within the construction and supply chains as well. The design of the new retail park includes almost 400 parking spaces, so there'll be ample parking. That will include accessible spaces, parent and child spaces, as well as electric vehicle charging points and cycle stands too, to encourage the alternative transport methods. In terms of the jobs being created, we would say that these are good jobs in terms of pay levels and opportunities for advancement. Aldi is an accredited Scottish living wage employer and I believe the highest paying supermarket in the UK. There is an extensive training programme for staff to assist with their development. They also have market-leading apprenticeship and graduate schemes. That training programme obviously also includes their licensing training. It's carried out quarterly in relation to alcohol and age-restricted products. All the staff have to sit and pass an exam before they're even allowed to work on the shop floor. They must achieve 100% to pass. That comprehensive training goes beyond what they have to do in terms of the mandatory 2-hour training from the 2005 Act, so it goes far beyond that. In terms of the supporting the local area, Aldi's aim is always to be part of the local community. They're a responsible business. They want to make a positive contribution to the areas beyond just their stores. They have various charitable initiatives. I suspect you're maybe familiar with their sport fund, where clubs can apply for their grants of up to £500 to try and help make sure that children can access community-based sports programmes. They also operate a surplus food programme across the UK, where surplus food is donated to those in need. Each store is then linked to a local charity or local organisations within its geographical area. So, for example, Aldi already supports the Stepping Stones playgroup here in Forfar and the Forfar community cafes, and has already donated over 100,000 meals as part of their programme. The proposed operating plan does include provision for home deliveries. This is not a service that Aldi offers as yet, but is considering providing in the future. Your Honours will be aware of the impact the pandemic had on shopping habits and obviously increased the popularity and the want for home deliveries. So that is something that they are looking to provide in the future. TLT, as their agents, will obviously be working with them to ensure that they have a robust delivery policy in place, particularly around Challenge 25 and making sure they comply with the relevant sections of the 2005 Act. We've done that successfully for many other clients across the country, and we'll be making sure that Aldi's delivery policy is the same. Obviously, Aldi want to make sure they get it right as well, so once we get to that stage, they will want to make sure that all the boxes are ticked as such. I'll mention it now, the report from Licensing Standards that you no doubt have seen in your pack has suggested delivery conditions be added to the licence, assuming that Your Honours are willing to grant. We're happy to accept conditions 1 to 4, but we would ask that condition 5 is not included. That condition relates to notices having to be affixed to every package containing alcohol, saying that it contains alcohol. We're asking for that to be excluded purely because there's practical issues around that. Not every order might be sort of boxed or packaged as one as such. It might be sort of on an open crate. If any of you have had home deliveries from any of the other supermarkets, it doesn't always come packed. It might come in a crate that you then empty yourself. There's then practical issues about affixing those notices in UTV. You might have to go then on every single alcohol product in an offer, in an order, sorry, and it just creates a sort of practical issues and a sort of, causes issues in that sense. We'd also expect orders to be marked electronically if they contain alcohol, so that anyone delivering the order, it's flagged to them that there's alcohol, and obviously Challenge 25 and those procedures have to be dealt with before they can pass it over. So they will be marked just in a different way. Otherwise, all I would flag to Your Honours is that obviously Aldi is an excellent retailer with an unblemished track record in Scotland. They want to invest in this site, they want to bring more jobs to the area. I'm happy to take questions, but otherwise I would ask you to grant the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that Before I go to questions, I'll ask the LSO whether they would like to say anything, because there's a report.
Thank you, Convener. No, I mean, the only thing that I've highlighted is the delivery conditions to be considered by the board, but like I say, it's up to the board to consider those and whether they're happy to exclude condition 5.
Thank you. I'll open it up now then to questions. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. A question for Mr Leith, probably. With regards to number 5 that you put in your report, is that applicable to any other supermarkets or indeed any other Aldi stores within Angus? So would there be sort of any problem in actually just generally just removing that one?
Yeah, I suppose it is applicable to others. Yeah, I suppose it is applicable to other stores, and I suppose it's for the board to consider whether that should be removed and considered when the application is made. Other applications that have come in, I've asked for the 5 conditions to be considered and has been granted, but this is for the board to consider on this occasion.
Councillor Whiteside.
Thank you. My question was similar. I'm not someone who takes advantage of deliveries from large supermarkets. I tend to use the smaller stores and go in person. So I'm not sure how the other supermarkets deal with that. They've agreed to the conditions, but can anybody confirm if actually every bit of alcohol is labelled when they get a delivery from a larger supermarket?
I can't answer that question. I've never taken delivery of alcohol myself, so.
Can anyone else help? It just seems to me that that's probably the problems you've described, probably experienced by other supermarkets, but I can't. It seems reasonable to me, but I can't comment because I don't know what they do.
Like yourself, Councillor Whiteside, I don't take deliveries from supermarkets. However, I think the delivery conditions, when we draft conditions like these, I think they're generally well thought out and there's reasons behind them. I'm not sure, well, I'm sure that I don't think I'd be particularly happy, my personal view, to drop one of the conditions when this board has considered the conditions in the past, came up with what they believe are the right conditions for these deliveries. So that's my view on that. I've got Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I think we've also heard, though, that although no notice could realistically be physically affixed, they do digitally affix a notice to each order containing alcohol, as we've heard. And I wonder if, given that that is very much within the spirit of said condition, that would then fall within the condition itself rather than having to drop it, given that they are actually putting a notice on each of these packages, just digitally rather than physically.
Yeah, Councillor Durno.
I know when my husband was doing the van deliveries for Tesco, they have really stringent, when there's alcohol in the order, the alcohol won't be left until there's someone that's over 18, and they take a photograph of it being delivered and signed for, but they won't leave the alcohol if somebody doesn't come to the door and they're of a certain age.
Councillor Clark, or have I been to you? Sorry, I think I missed you. I think you were asking.
That was okay because that was much more relevant to that, Chair. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My question is totally different because there's no point in repeating. But just there's a bit under activities, and unless I'm being particularly thick, I'm not quite getting this. Recorded music within and out with core licensed hours. That seems like a contradiction in terms to me. So maybe just explain. Thanks.
Of course. All that means, obviously, the maximum core licensed hours for off sales can only be 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. The store might open or will open before 10 a.m. So there might be background music played before 10 a.m, which is the out with licensed hours part.
I'm getting that because the shelves have to be filled. Thanks.
Thank you. Going back to Councillor Melville's statement, clearly if the electronic tagging does the job anyway, then there's no issue and there wouldn't be any reason to, well, we wouldn't say on condition 5 to drop it because it'd be covered anyway. Would your electronic tagging fit in with condition 5?
I think we would happy accept that, but in that case, all I would ask is, could we amend the wording slightly so when it says notices, we can say either digitally or hard copy or whatever that wording is, just so it's clear that a digital flag on a delivery system is sufficient, rather than a paper notice having to be affixed.
Councillor Brays.
Yes, I'm just wondering if we took that decision and we did amend it today, if that would comply with legislation that we have to work within.
I would have to go to either a legal rep.
I don't think it's really a legal point specifically. I think the wording just needs to be accurate. So from what I'm hearing, it should be a digital notice shall be, I don't know if it's affixed. Would affixed be the right word? Applied to every package containing alcohol dispatched on the premises, stating that the package shall contain alcohol and it's an offence. So we can amend that condition. And
yeah, and it's within our legal competence to do that.
Councillor Milne. Are there any other questions? No questions. I'll move to comments. Councillor Melville.
Well, I think given what we've just heard, I think it would be sensible to amend the 5th condition to the effect as set out by our legal representative there. I think that would cover this completely and enable us to just move forward with the 5 conditions with the 5th amended. And so if you're happy to accept a motion just now, convener, I'd like to move that.
No motion yet. I'll come back to the applicant just to sum up before I go to motions.
I think all I would say, and I appreciate the discussion around the delivery conditions and the flexibility around that. Otherwise, I would just say, there are Aldi wants to invest in the site. They are excited at the prospect of being able to deliver their store in Arbroath and deliver more choice for the customers in the area. So they're well known. They are a good retailer. So other than that, I would ask you to grant.
Thank you for that. Just before, sorry, I move on, I've noticed there's also maybe not an issue, but a reminder on a completion certificate. Is there anyone to talk to that? Lee?
Yeah, good morning, convener, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, as per the board papers, I have no issues at all. It is a provisional, so it's quite simple from a building standards perspective. The comments are really just in relation to a reminder going forward for a Section 50. They need the completion certificate in place, so it's meant to be helpful. There is a point on page 10, just in comments from right at the end, the last paragraph. I note the plan submitted relates to a previous application. That wasn't actually part of my comment, so I just want to clarify. I don't know where that's come from, but I have no issues at all. Okay.
Thank you for that. With that, if there are no other comments, we will move back to Councillor Melville. Sorry for that.
No, thanks, convener. Yes, I'd like to move that we grant, subject to the standard home delivery conditions with the exception of number 5, which I would amend to read, a digital notice shall be applied to every package, and then from then on.
Councillor Whiteside.
Happy to second that.
Any amendments? No? Unanimous? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 5. Request to vary under Licensing Act 2005. And this one is, so I'll just get my page. It is the Airlie Arms Hotels, St Malcolm's Wine, Kirriemuir. And we have Dilys Robertson, who's going to talk to our application.
Not really much to say on this. Essentially, we're just asking for a small edit on our Sunday hours, just due to lunches and functions and things we hold. Obviously, they are usually in before 12:30. We serve our lunch menu from 11:30 and we serve a breakfast menu in the morning. So it's just to come in line with the other days and the small edit.
Thank you very much. I note there is also an LSO report. Would you like to say anything? Or?
Thank you, Convener. No, it's straightforward. The times requested within the licensing policy, so yeah, there's nothing else to add.
Thank you very much. If we now move to the recommendations, the recommendations are: 1, to grant the application subject to statutory conditions and any other variations to the conditions to which the licence is subject that the board may wish to impose. 2, to defer the application to the next licensing board. Or 3, to refuse the application on one or more of the grounds referred to in paragraph 4. Councillor Melville.
Thank you, Convener. I move that we grant the application.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Clark.
Happy to.
Any amendments? Unanimous? Agreed. Thank you. So I'll start again. Item number 6, request to extend hours under licence in Scotland Act 2005. And we have licence number 305, Utopia, 30 to 36 George Street, Montrose. And we have Janet Hood as the agent in this application.
Your Honours, it's lovely to be back at my home board.
Janet, press your...
Good morning, Convener, Your Honours. It's lovely to be back at the home board. This application, as Convener said, is for extended hours for MoFest, which you'll all be aware of, for Utopia. My client, the premises manager, Mark Sivright, is here with me. Just to give some background on him, he's worked in the hospitality industry, mostly late-night entertainment, for over 25 years. He's a talented manager and employer, and he has a good reputation with Police Scotland and the LSOs, and also within the industry. I've occasionally had to call on Mark's experience to help with clients who get into trouble, and Police Scotland have always been very welcoming when that happens. As you know, MoFest is becoming more popular every year. It's a really special occasion in Angus, bringing locals, visitors and tourists in, and bringing in much needed spend, not just to late night venues, not just to hospitality, but to shops, hotels, bed and breakfast, pubs, clubs. In 2016, the benefit to the community was 750,000. This was recorded in the Courier. And I read yesterday that it's estimated that more than £1 million will be brought in to the Montrose district because of MoFest. This is a fantastic boost to the local economy. And to be perfectly honest, it depends on people like Mark, it depends who helps with the organisation of MoFest, it depends on the volunteers who come together to help this. And I think it's one of the best things that you can see in my part of Angus. I think it's one of the great events of the year. Now, you'll know this year has been very, very hard for hospitality. Costs escalating in every aspect, staff, electricity, you name it. And of course, the cost of living crisis has reduced footfall, which, has made it tough. But my client is not deterred. He wants to put on a good show for his regulars and hopes to encourage more people into Montrose to enjoy the festival. Some of you may be aware he has an extensive online presence. Now, my client is offering a selection of live and disco music at the venue with the increasingly popular afternoon disco, hence the application from noon until 7 o'clock. Now, my client is quite happy because he took note of what Kevin said in his comments on this, and he's quite happy to move the start time of that back to 2 o'clock so that it can start at 2, go on to 7 o'clock, and that keeps it within your, well, it keeps it to 13 hours, which is 1 hour less than your normal policy. In the afternoon, he's going to have the normal 2 bar staff and a glass collector and 2 SIA stewards. He has other staff because if it gets really busy, he's got other staff on standby during the day, and he's quite prepared for the event. Now, he also wants to extend the late night offering till 3 o'clock on the Saturday, and an extra, that's an extra half hour, until 2:30 on Sunday. And this is again an extra half hour. And he's engaged for those evenings 8 SIA badge stewards, 9 bar staff, and 3 glass collectors. My client, of course, will be there the whole time that this is going on. Your Honours will recall that the premises used to enjoy afternoon opening. However, the previous tenant decided to give that up. I was actually here, I represented him, and he wanted to not have to think about opening in the afternoon. So we are asking for that to come back for this event. Given the popularity of afternoon events, our client would like to have the Saturday because afternoon allows people who don't, well, I suppose I could go, but people who don't really want to stay up late, they can go out and have a bit of fun, have a dance, listen to bands, listen to the disco, and enjoy it. As I said, the offering will be 13 hours if everything is granted. It's not anticipated. Now, I'm quite sure you're all aware of this, but when the legislation, the 2005 legislation came in, the Scottish Government said they would prefer not to have people in premises for 14 hours. Now, even in those days, nobody stayed in premises for more than 14 hours. My experience, and I've been working in this field, whether in local government or in private practice, during the day, you maybe get, now this is going back, you would probably get a couple of wee men who came in to get a heat and a pint and a pie at lunchtime, and they would stay. And then in the evening, in a pub, for instance, the dynamic would change, but you don't tend to get people in premises. And my client's experience of this is that that doesn't happen. If people are coming in to dance and have fun in the afternoon, what would you say, Mark? Likely to be there in the evening? No. I think that's just the way it works, to be perfectly truthful. Why does my client request the 3 o'clock? I know you're all saying this because I do know that it's against policy. Well, in his experience, young people do enjoy late night events. And what is happening in Angus is that people are going to Dundee, they're going to Perth and Kinross or Aberdeenshire, all of which have premises open till 3 o'clock. They don't leave Angus at 2:30, obviously. They don't wait till the end. They leave at 10. They might even not bother coming into premises in Angus. And by the time the last bus, train, or go by car, they deprive Angus businesses of much needed income. And I think it's all part of our job in Angus to try to look to benefit what's happening here. Now, Your Honour's policy with regard to late night opening has been in place since 2009. I'm not criticising it particularly because I genuinely think it was created with the best possible intentions. But we all know that time has moved on. Kids in particular, I don't mean under 18s, but young people tend to want to stay out later. I mean, I can't imagine staying out till 3 in the morning, but to be perfectly truthful, this is what's happening. You know, they get up at 10 at night and then they go out at midnight. Kevin, the LSO, has given, I think, a very good consideration of your policy. But you must know that Your Honours gave my clients a 2:30 opening, and an extra half hour wouldn't adversely affect people living in the area. Since Mark took over the running premises, there have been no complaints. There have been no noise issues. There have been no issues with the police. And I can say hand in heart, the premises are well run. If there had been any issues, I would have expected to have a far different comment from Kevin, and I would have expected to have police objections. We had police objections before for these premises when they were run by my former client, but we're not having that now. Now, in addition, my client's not just greedy. I mean, people say, oh, they just want this for this and that. He's sponsoring the 4 SIA stewards. There are only going to be 4 SIA stewards on the High Street in Montrose, and he's paying for them. This is a generous gesture, and it will mean that the other stewards, there will be more stewards, but they're all volunteers, and they'll be helped, they'll be given their duties by the stewards that Mark is putting forward. This means MoFest itself can retain more of the income for MoFest to the benefit of the community in the future. As I said, there are no objections from the police, the LSO, or neighbours. Excuse me, Kevin's comment isn't an objection, it's merely a comment. I think I've addressed the afternoon extension and the fact that my client is happy to reduce the hours. Kevin quite rightly says the board's policy has been established to promote the licensing objections with particular reference to the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance and the promotion of public health. There are no reasons, and no reasons were given in Kevin's report, which I thank him for, to suspect that these objectives will not be met by my client, despite the fact that the application is beyond policy hours. As I said, if it were the case, I would expect to have a considerably more robust objection and something robust from the police as well. I don't honestly believe that the fact the application is against policy, it doesn't meet the normal terms of refusal of an extended hours application. And as there are no reasons being offered to Your Honours to refuse this, Your Honours would have to think up reasons beyond the mere fact of the policy if you were to refuse this. Now, I'm not going to go through the legislation because I'm quite sure that you're all perfectly well aware of it. MoFest is an annual special local musical event bringing in live and disco music to Montrose for the enjoyment of locals, visitors and tourists. And I'll keep the rest of this, if I may, for my summing up. Thank you. Happy to have any questions, and I move the grant.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the LSO whether you would like to add anything to that.
Thank you, Convener. No, nothing further to add to that. I think points have been laid out for the board to consider. Thank you.
I'll open to questions. Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, and thanks for that, Janet. And this is probably a question for LSO. I do think we've got a board policy, but we'll have the option to vary when necessary. I believe I'm right in saying we've varied in the past for one-off events like this. I would just like to get confirmation. I think it is important to support tourist industry in Angus when it's relevant.
We'll get legal to come.
Yeah, I think that's probably one for me, Councillor Whiteside. The board's policy is there for a reason, but you can grant outside of that policy. That's not a problem. Each case needs to be considered on its own merits. The 2 points for members to consider in this case is, in terms of Section 68 of the 2005 Act, whether the board considers it appropriate to grant extended hours in connection with a special event or occasion to be catered for the premises, or a special event of local or national significance, extend the hours in respect to the premises by such period as specified. So really it's whether you consider this application falls within that part of the legislation and whether or not you are minded to grant outside policy, which you can do.
Councillor Durno.
Thanks, Convener. Mrs Hood, am I right in saying this is the old George Hotel that's in Montrose? Is that the same site?
Then you're just down George Street from there's a George Hotel, then there's the garage, and then there's the night.
Oh, is that the one that's on the corner?
Directly opposite the police station.
Yeah. Am I right in saying there's not an awful lot of neighbours directly next door to it?
There's no neighbours facing or on either side. There's extensive gardens and neighbours at the back.
Microphone.
When my client,
Sorry.
oh, I'm so sorry. When my client took on the premises, he made sure that he put in appropriate soundproofing at the back of the premises. It used to be where people went out to smoke, and that's where there had been complaints in the past. My client, obviously I told him about that, recognised that he had to do something, and he's done it. We haven't had I don't believe we've had a peep from a neighbour since you've been there. Sorry.
question, another quick question is, if it's like really quiet and it's a horrible night, would they probably just close earlier if there wasn't anybody, if it wasn't that busy?
My client is sincerely hoping it will be busy. MoFest, I mean, I go in during the day because I enjoy it, and I go and listen to the odd band. You know, they have bands in the street and it's fun. But my client would anticipate being busy that night, hence the fact he has actually engaged the extra staff and the extra stewards just to make sure that everything goes according to plan.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments, and I'll make a start, if that's okay. I was about to say this is a difficult one, but I don't think it is a difficult one. One thing that maybe didn't bother me, but I think the statement that we gave an extension to 2:30 has any relation to us now saying, well, we'll give to 3 o'clock. I'm not sure. I mean, that suggests that the next time it would be 3:30 and then 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock. But that said, I think in my opinion, this is clearly on, is this, you know, a special event, and in a sense a special music event. I must admit, coming from Kirriemuir, I'm quite aware of Bonfest, but not MoFest. Maybe I should be more aware of MoFest. But on those grounds, I think that's what we've got to decide. Is this, and I'm sure people from Montrose and others will know that if this is a special music event, and it sounds like it is, and if it is, then I think as far as I'm concerned, we have the okay to extend this. I think at a pile I've got Councillor Fotheringham first.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I've been on this board quite some time, and I remember we've granted extensions before. I know that the former councillor Paul Valentine spoke very, very highly of the MoFest because he's a resident of Montrose. This is a one-off. I have got absolutely no issue with allowing this. It's not going to happen every week. It's a one-off, and like yourself, it's good for the community of Angus and Montrose. Thank you.
Councillor Gregg next.
Thank you, Convener. Similar to Councillor Fotheringham, I'm more than happy with what I've heard from Janet Hood today. There's sufficient number of SIA door staff going to be available, as well as staff within the premises. There have been no complaints, there are no issues from the police or from anyone else. And I also accept the goodwill gesture from the applicant to reduce the hour by 1 so that it fits in with our policy. That shows a willingness to be able to comply and to do all that is needed to do that. As others have mentioned, this is a special occasion, and this is a nightclub. During COVID, nightclubs were hammered during the COVID, and even after that, they were the last business to be released back to open again. So I think we really do need to support our nighttime economy. With that, and asking to reduce it by the 1 hour, I thank you for that, but I would be minded to grant it as it is on the application here and allow them the 14 hours. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Not really much more to add apart from what Craig and Ross have said. Just I know how well organised MoFest is. I'm from Brechin, so I know it's quite a popular event, and lots of people from Brechin come through. I haven't been in your nightclub. I'm not a nightclub goer anymore, sadly. But yeah. The fact that you're also, funding the 4 SIAs, I think is great. I don't think there's ever been an issue. I've never heard anything bad about MoFest in the past. It seems to be very well organised. And like we said, it's a special event, and therefore I think we should grant also. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Melville.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe in contrast to Councillor Scott, I am a nightclub goer, and I have done a few nights out that I've had a 3 AM finish in my time. It doesn't happen very regularly because I don't really have the energy for it. But I know that the demand is there for it, so I have no issue with that. And like the points made by Councillor Gregg, I do think that we need to do more to support the local nighttime economy. For me as well, this certainly qualifies as a special event, so there's absolutely no issues there. So I'd be more than happy to support this.
Councillor Dunlop.
I'm quite happy to support it as well, considering I'm going to be babysitting that night. I hope my family don't come home at 3 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments. I'll move back to, Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, Convener. Very supportive of this application because MoFest is a one-off annual event that occurs in Montrose. It's possibly the biggest event that happens in Montrose. Very well supported by the public and essential now, I think, to the community of Montrose. I have no problem at all with people staying up late at MoFest and premises being open a bit later to give them their entertainment. My late younger brother was on the original committee that founded MoFest and did an awful lot of work. He was a huge enthusiast of it. MoFest really came out of the licensed trade more than anything, and it's the licensed trade that are carrying it on. The premises concerned, they are right across the road from the police station, and if if the police can't manage to keep an eye on it, well, there's something far wrong. So yes, wholly supportive of this application. Good luck with it, and I will be fully participating. I visited the venue concerned in every iteration previously, but I've not been to it yet. Maybe this year will be the first time, but not at that time in the morning, I don't think.
Maybe I could accompany you and find out what it's about.
Absolutely, you'd be more than welcome.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks very much. Well, I'm not going to speak about the late nights or the imbibing of sherbets and anything else. I'm going to go for the music and say that Scotland can never have enough music. People can never have enough live music. And as a musician myself, I really want to absolutely endorse what everybody's been saying, so I'm not going to repeat that again. But we need festivals for all sorts of reasons, but for me, it's the music. So very well done, and all the very best.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. If we can now go back to Mrs Hood for a summing up. Would you like to sum up after hearing that?
Thank you. I think again, it's my I've got a new hearing aid. I sound quite loud to myself. It's absolutely fantastic that MoFest is so well recognised by all of you. It doesn't only bring people into Montrose and the area on the event, it showcases Angus. It shows how the vibrancy and the diversity of Angus, and it keeps, if this slightly later event will keep people in Angus on a Saturday and a Sunday and prevent them going to Dundee and Aberdeenshire, where later trading hours do obtain. I think you do agree that my clients run the premises well and there have been no issues, and I hope you're with me, and I move the grant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll go to the recommendations. Recommendation 1 is to grant the application. Recommendation 2, to grant the application with such variation to the conditions the licence is subject to as the board consider necessary or expedient for the purpose of any of the licensing objectives. 3, to defer the application to the next licensing board, or, sorry, I've got 2 twos. 4, to refuse the application in accordance with paragraph 3. Can I ask, please, Councillor Scott?
I would like to move to grant the application, please.
Seconder, Councillor Bray. Yes, that would be with the offer to drop the extended time. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And with Councillor Gregg.
Can I put in an amendment actually to that?
Yes, you can.
That we grant the application as it is requested within the application as per the paper, so including the extra hour that they offered to get rid of.
Yeah.
Rather than dropping it.
Do you have a seconder for that?
Can I just clarify, does Councillor Scott want to change her motion?
Yeah.
Convener, I wonder whether it can be clarified with the applicant's agent, whether that is what's before the board now, and that would be what would be wanted.
Oops, my client would obviously prefer to have the extra hour because he'll get people in earlier and you know, passing people might come in, have a drink on the way up to the high street or whatever, but it's not a game changer, so it depends on all of you. But thank you very much for making that offer.
Okay, so a motion, then I would like to make an amendment.
Well,
Yes. We'll grant with the extra hour. We won't remove that out. As requested, we'll not be removing the hour. Yep.
Yes, I'll second that on those terms. Thanks.
Sorry, who's second? Councillor Scott, that's Councillor Brace. And Councillor Gregg, are you happy to drop your amendment?
Yeah, I'll withdraw.
So is there
Is
any other amendment?
I'm bringing that amendment back in, which is the offer from the client to reduce that hour to bring it in line with policy. I think that when we decide policy, it's very important we don't just ad hoc decide it. We think quite clearly, so that would be mine. But I don't know if I've got a seconder. Yes, I do. Linda Clark, Councillor Clark.
I would always give a second, even though I might not vote your way, because I think that's democratically correct.
Sorry, Councillor Clark, you'll recall that when we've discussed this previously, I think we said that we wouldn't want seconders unless the seconder believed that it was going to vote, because it's quasi-judicial.
I don't agree with that at all, actually, but if I'll stand corrected. I'll always try my hand with that.
Are you going to second because you, or aren't you? So there's no seconder for... No, okay.
So therefore, it's a unanimous decision.
It is. The decision is unanimous to agree as was in the report without the reduction of the hour.
Well, thank you very much for being your honours. My client is actually... Again, sorry, my client is delighted, and thank you so much for your consideration. And I'm sure MoFest is going to be great fun. I hope to see some of you there. I'll be there during the day, probably not dancing, unless somebody asks me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just moving on to the next item. We move on to item 7, a request to relieve the failure to comply with a procedural requirement. Excuse me. We have with us Nathan, excuse me of your surname, Sengotayan?
Actually, Sengotayan is my...
Okay,
apologise. Morning, everybody. Sengotayan is my wife's surname.
Oh, sorry.
Tangaraj is my surname.
Right.
Nathan Tangaraj is my surname.
That's fine. Would you like to talk to your failure to comply?
Yeah, certainly I will do. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm not sure I'm prepared for this, but I was in communication with licensing team, started communicating on 20th of December, but during the break, and the process of taking over the shop, it's a new business for us, and this is the first time we couldn't follow the time frame which we have to follow, and I can only apologize on that point. And then we would like to, ask members to accept our our apology and grant the application. So that's all and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Questions from members, sorry. Councillor Clark.
A question, and I think I'm going to try and get your name right. Mr. Tangaran.
As Tangaraj, Councillor. Yeah, thank you.
From what you're saying and what I'm reading here, are you telling me, because it's difficult to hear from here, to be perfectly honest, are you telling me this is an oversight? It's a perfectly normal question, please.
That's correct, Councillor. There was too much to take at the time for us to go through the whole process. And as I said, Councillor, it's a new business for us. And we just, it's just a mistake, genuine mistake. And we'll make sure it won't happen again in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, I think am I correct? This is in two parts. We have to decide the transfer application first.
No, the other way around. You have to decide the failure to comply first, and thereafter consider the transfer.
Yeah.
Councillor Melville.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Yeah, I think this is fairly straightforward. It appears to be a genuine oversight, and obviously we've had the apology, which certainly I would be quite happy to accept. So, quite happy to grant the relief in the first instance.
Any other comments? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Melville. It appears to be a genuine oversight, and at the end of the day, licensing regulations and laws and rules aren't the most easy thing to follow along. So I appreciate the apology for coming in, sir, and I would go along with to move to accept it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we move to recommendations. Recommendation 1. Note that the clerk has received a request from the applicant to relieve from failure to comply with procedural requirements of the 2005 Act, which required to be determined by the board. Do we note that? 2. Determine whether to relieve the failure to comply with the procedural requirements, and if so, whether to impose any order to enable the proceedings to continue as if the failure had not occurred. Do we agree to relieve the failure?
Agreed.
And 3, if relief is so granted, determine the transfer application in accordance with paragraphs 3.3 to 3.9. Is that an agreement as well?
Agreed.
Tina?
Yes, it's just the grounds of refusal are only that having regard to the licensing objectives, the transferee is not a fit and proper pair.
We'll have a comfort break for 5 minutes. Okay.
John, do you want to stop the stream, please?
Welcome back, everyone. We will now move on to agenda item number 8, which is the annual financial report. This report is for noting only. The figures for this report are contained in Appendix 1. I'll take it that members have read the report. Are we happy to note?
Agreed.
Sorry. Councillor Gregg.
I have a question.
Yep.
Going through the statement, I just wanted to query direct staff costs with elected members of 900. I just wanted more of an understanding of how that figure came to, what has caused that. Because looking at the notes, which are on page 30, about the note salary, national insurance, pension costs associated with the clerk and other legal services staff, licensing standards and officers and other staff responsible for the admin of support. It doesn't specifically mention us, so I just wanted to question where that figure's come from, what it's made up of, and thank you.
Tina, would you be able to?
We don't have anybody from finance to be able to answer that question.
It's something that could be taken
Absolutely.
offline.
I can email you. I can go to finance and then email you the response. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Melville.
Actually, I've just realised it's probably also a question for finance.
Happy to take them any forward.
Thank you. It's just obviously the net expenditure is in the region of 12,000, which is, therefore a deficit for the board in this year. And I just wondered how that would compare to previous years, and also whether or not we are anticipating maybe breaking even in future years. So if you could take that forward.
I can actually answer that one for you, Councillor Melville. So we report every year and have done for a few years now the financial report, so if we can look back and see sort of how the board has progressed. I would say this year is a particular deficit because we actually are now fully staffed. We haven't been for a lot of time, for many years. So that's probably the reason for us being sort of under in terms of the finance. You'll remember, members, that I brought a paper last time at the last board to increase the fees that we can increase, and you did that at a rate of 10%. That's been identified, that's going to be necessary, as you can see from the financial reconciliation. Some of the problem here, though, is that we don't have the power to amend, only the Scottish Government has the power to amend some of the fees. So from that perspective, we do have our hands tied. So I think we've done all we can to be able to square the circle in terms of finance by raising the fees that we can by 10%, and thereafter I think we need to feed back to the Scottish Government as to, that's what this really is for.
Councillor Melville.
Just on a supplementary to that then, and obviously in terms of feeding back to the Scottish Government, are you aware of any discussions that are ongoing? And obviously there will be other local authorities in a similar position. Are they also looking at speaking to?
I mean, the Scottish Government entered this into, by amendment, the legislation. I'm presuming they did that for the reason to keep an oversight to see what's happening. Scottish Government, from an Angus perspective, I don't know what other local authorities are going to do. I suspect that there is a general feeling that the fees need to be increased, and I'm not aware specifically if there been any move to do so. There may well be, but I'm not aware of it at this point in time. But certainly the more that we put these reports to them, the more they can see the stark reality.
On this one at least. In terms of feeding back then, obviously you can exercise your function there, but do you need a specific instruction from the board to do that, or you can exercise that under delegate?
Yes, I think the reality is that these reports are being requested by the Scottish Government for information. I feel that in my capacity I can highlight that on behalf of the Angus board.
Councillor Braze, did you have a question?
More a comment. Yes, we have the information before us there, and we have the income and the expenditure, and goes into a wee bit of detail there, but the expenditure doesn't cover the full overhead cost of this committee. I'm pretty sure it covers bits of it. There's something in there for elected members, but you know, the cost of keeping councillors. Maybe going forward, we need to make sure that all costs, including, you know, from the chief executive down, overhead costs are incorporated in these figures. And that's not just for this committee, that's for everything we do. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I would agree. It might be interesting. I have a memory, whether it's correct or not, I don't know, that some local, when you look at the cost for a specific part of licensing, a license, in one local authority it can be many times more than in another local authority. It might be of interest, certainly to the board, to find out what our near neighbours charge for specific items, which we could then enforce for the future.
And not specific to this board, but we have done that exercise on the civic side for short-term lets, because there's a paper before you today. Yes, so we're quite keen on keeping an eye on what everybody else is doing to make sure that we're in the ballpark, and that we're, you know, it's a balancing act though, obviously, between not having the fees so that they're inaccessible to people, but also we have a legislative requirement to balance the books.
Councillor Brace.
Yeah, just a further comment. You know, if we don't balance the books properly with all costs considered, then that's going to, you know, any deficit is borne by Angus Council, and it means cuts to other services elsewhere, less potholes filled in, and or has to be raised through council tax, you know, so it's really important. If we're trying to balance the books and cover the costs of this committee through our fees, etc., we need to be absolutely sure that we're trying to cover all the costs of this committee. So that's it, that's just a point. Thanks.
I'm sure we'd all agree with that. Any other comments? No? Okay, we'll move to the recommendation. Recommendation is we note and approve the financial report and of the Angus Licensing Board for the period 1st of April 23 to the 31st of March 24, and that is found at Appendix 1 to this report. Do we note and approve?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. We'll move now to item 9, which is the annual functions report. This report is for noting. Do we have any questions on the report? Councillor Durno.
On page 43, one of the bars on this paper, I just wonder if another licence is to be issued, can it come to licensing board and not be deferred? If a constituent's concerns about this premises, so I just wondered if that would be.
If there are objections made by a member of the public or a statutory consultee, then it would always come to the board. Normally, there is a delegation in the statement of licensing policy about occasionals and how we deal with those. So it would really depend on the circumstances, but most business comes through, well, most contentious business comes through the board.
It was just in case due to holidays or whatever, and the application came through and it was, approved by delegated powers, and then the people who have got a problem with it haven't had a chance to voice their opinion on it.
Of course, if there's a specific case that you want to discuss out with the parameters today, then I'd be happy to take that up with you. Yep.
I think, and I'm sure Tina will correct me if I'm wrong, that if it's delegated and we don't see it. There has to be a reason for it to come to us. Otherwise, we're just not going to see it. I don't think, but Tina again will say that we can just ask for it to come to us.
No, we can not use our delegated powers, and obviously that's a discretion on the part of officers, really. So it would, again, it's just case by case, but the vast majority of matters that are delegated go through on a delegated basis. They wouldn't come before you.
Excuse me, I've lost my place again. I'm just trying to find it. Are there any other comments, or questions or comments on the report? Sorry, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Convener. Now, I'm just being a wee bit pedantic, but it's just, I think it might be important. On 37, page 37, 3.3, it's speaking about bylaws in place prohibiting, etc. You're reading it there. Now, it says at the end of that paragraph, the board is obligated to review these bylaws every 10 years. I've got that, no problem. What I would maybe just like to see in there is when we did it or when we're going to do it. It just would finish that.
That's absolutely fine. We'll take that forward for next year. What I can say is that from my memory, we did it about 2022, so it's not been, it wasn't that long ago that we did it, but certainly that's good feedback and we'll take that on board, Councillor Clark.
I think it's probably worth saying that the annual functions report gives us an idea of some of the work done by our licensing colleagues, and I think again a thanks has to go out to them in the amount of work shown in the report. So again, I would like to thank our colleagues for all the work they do in terms of that. With that then, Councillor Melville.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Same paragraph as Councillor Clark spoke to. It speaks about bylaws in Brechin, Carnoustie, Montrose, Forfar, Arbroath and Kirriemuir. Obviously, I've only been on the council for 2 years now, so this may have happened before my time, but is there a specific reason that Monifieth is not in there?
I don't know the answer to that question. Can I come back to you on that? Maybe that's not a borough.
Councillor Whiteside.
I wouldn't trust my memory completely. That's why I asked Councillor Melville to go ahead and ask, but I believe it was discussed and there were no particular areas put forward for Monifieth, but it would be worth checking.
Happy.
Okay, with that, if we move then to the recommendation, it is to note the terms of the 6th Annual Functions Report of Angus Licensing Board for the period April 2023 to the 31st of March 2024 as attached. Do we note? Thank you. That takes us on to item 10. Sorry, I'll just get my page. Yeah. This is agenda item number 10, gambling policy statement. Members will have had a chance to read this, but I believe we have Jennifer Burns from Legal who's available online to talk to this report. Jennifer?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, the draft report has been prepared following the last meeting of the board where this was discussed. And I would like to highlight just a couple of points, if I may, relative to the draft itself. First of all, the draft, once approved by members, requires to go to consultation. There are formal parameters around that. However, previously, the board also consulted publicly, so not just with the formal consultees, but also publicly. And this was done by Facebook, etc. And the policy, the draft itself suggests that this is by Facebook X and have your say. However, it has been suggested that this may, these all being electronic versions, that perhaps there ought also to be a hard copy available, for example, by notification at libraries, and members may wish to consider that. The other point relative to the content of the draft itself, although that also the consultation parties is also referred to in the draft, at paragraph 6.3, which is on page 18 of my version of it, although apologies that the page numbers are not actually on the document itself. There is reference to a paragraph 6.4. Now, there isn't a paragraph 6.4, and so I would suggest an amendment to that. So this is a paragraph which is about enforcement, and it's about how the policies and legal requirements relating to gambling premises are put into effect by officers on behalf of the board. And so my suggestion, if I may, is that rather than where it says reference to 6.4, that it actually is amended to say officers authorised to act on behalf of the licensing board. So those really are the only two suggestions that suggested amendments that I have relative to the draft, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before we go to questions, can we just deal with that? Are we happy with that suggestion? Yeah? Okay. We're happy with the suggestion on the amendment, and I think we also happy with the hard copy for consultation. Yeah, we've got a question from Councillor Melville.
Yes, thanks. Just in terms of the physical copies, I wonder if alongside that we could also, and this may already be part of the suggestion, Mrs. Burns, but to look at notices in the local press as well, because there will be people who maybe don't pass their library very often but do go and get a paper, who would then be able to find out about this in the local paper. So I wonder if that's being looked at or could be looked at.
Mrs. Burns?
Yes, there's no reason from a practical perspective. Obviously, there's a cost connection with that, but yes, that can certainly be done if members wish it.
I think to get to the widest audience possible, that is probably quite a good idea. Even though there is a cost, I'm assuming it wouldn't be thousands of pounds, but who knows nowadays. But yeah, I think if people agreed that that's...
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Braze.
Do we still do adverts in papers? But that's still something that council does well then. I'm quite happy with it then.
Agreed with that as a suggestion? Yeah. Yes? Okay, thank you. I'll move on now to any questions anyone has. Are there any questions? Any comments? No? Councillor Melville?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Quite happy with this. Obviously, the document itself will go out to consultation, and as in the report, if there are any major amendments, that will come back before the board. So I see no issue with this whatsoever. I'm happy to see it go out.
Thank you very much. The only comment I would make is that I can't recall in 2 years, a year and a bit, whatever it might be, a gambling one actually coming to us on gambling. So it's obviously fairly rare, or it's all done through delegated. Seeing that, we'll move now to recommendations. Recommendation 1, approve the terms of the consultation draft statement of principles, the policy statement prepared under section 349 of the Gambling Act 2005, annexed to this report, appendix 1. Do we approve? Approved. 2. Authorise the clerk to proceed with formal consultation upon its terms, having agreed the consultees, including the Angus Alcohol and Drugs Partnership and the Protecting People Angus Strategic Committee. Do we authorise? Yes. And following the 4-week consultation period and having regard to the consultation responses, authorise the clerk to adopt the policy statement subject to minor alterations as are necessary to reflect the legislative or board policy changes and provide no substantive changes are recommended by the consultees. Should any substantive changes be proposed, the matter would be referred back. So basically we're just giving delegated authority to go ahead and there are no major changes. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We will now move. Item 11. Just get my page. So agenda item number 11, personal licences, delegated approvals. Members will have read these. This report is for noting only. Are there any questions? Okay, the recommendation, you've recommended the board note. Do we agree to note? Thank you. We will move to item 12. Page 211 on my papers. And this is occasional licences, delegated approvals. Again, a report for noting only. Members will have read these. Are there any questions? Any comments? Do we agree to note? Agreed. And number 13 at page 219. Agenda item number 13. Premises licence, minor variations, again delegated approvals. This one is for noting only. Members will have read it. Do we agree to note? Agreed. And with that, that is the end of the licensing board.
John, could you stop the live stream just now and we'll take a few minutes to start Civic?